80 people were killed or wounded in two evil attacks. One Saturday morning in El Paso, Texas, a wicked man went to a Walmart store where families were shopping with their loved ones. He shot and murdered 20 people and injured 26 others, including precious little children. Then, in the early hours of Sunday morning, Dayton, Ohio, another twisted monster opened fire on a crowded downtown street. He murdered 9 people, including his own sister, and injured 27 others. The First Lady and I join all Americans in praying and grieving for the victims, their families, and the survivors. We will stand by their side forever. We will never forget. These barbaric slaughters are an assault upon our communities, an attack upon our nation, and a crime against all of humanity. We are outraged and sickened by this monstrous evil, the cruelty, the hatred, the malice, the bloodshed, and the terror. Our hearts are shattered for every family whose parents, children, husbands, and wives were ripped from their arms and their lives. America weeps for the fallen. We are a loving nation, and our children are entitled to grow up in a just, peaceful, and loving society. Together, we lock arms to shoulder the grief. We ask God in heaven to ease the anguish of those who suffer, and we vow to act with urgent resolve. I want to thank the many law enforcement personnel who responded to these atrocities with the extraordinary grace and courage of American heroes. I have spoken with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, as well as Mayor DeMargo of El Paso, Texas, and Mayor Nan Whaley of Dayton, Ohio, to express our profound sadness and unfailing support. Today, we also send the condolences of our nation to President Obrador of Mexico and all the people of Mexico for the loss of their citizens in the El Paso shooting. Terrible, terrible thing. I have also been in close contact with Attorney General Barr and FBI Director Wray. Federal authorities are on the ground, and I have directed them to provide any and all assistance required, whatever is needed. The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul. We have asked the FBI to identify all further resources they need to investigate and disrupt hate crimes and domestic terrorism, whatever they need. We must recognize that the Internet has provided a dangerous avenue to radicalize disturbed minds and perform demented acts. We must shine light on the dark recesses of the Internet and stop mass murders before they start. The Internet, likewise, is used for human trafficking, illegal drug distribution, and so many other heinous crimes. The perils of the Internet and social media cannot be ignored, and they will not be ignored. In the 2 decades since Columbine, our nation has watched with rising horror and dread as one mass shooting has followed another, over and over again, decade after decade. We cannot allow ourselves to feel powerless. We can and will stop this evil contagion. In that task, we must honor the sacred memory of those we have lost by acting as one people. Open wounds cannot heal if we are divided. We must seek real bipartisan solutions. We have to do that in a bipartisan manner that will truly make America safer and better for all. First, we must do a better job of identifying and acting on early warning signs. I am directing the Department of Justice to work in partnership with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop tools that can detect mass shooters before they strike. As an example, the monster in the Parkland High School in Florida had many red flags against him, and yet nobody took decisive action. Nobody did anything. Why not? Second, we must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Cultural change is hard, but each of us can choose to build a culture that celebrates the inherent worth and dignity of every human life. That's what we have to do. Third, we must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals who may commit acts of violence, and make sure those people not only get treatment, but when necessary, involuntary confinement. Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun. Fourth, we must make sure that those judged to pose a grave risk to public safety do not have access to firearms, and that if they do, those firearms can be taken through rapid due process. That is why I have called for red flag laws, also known as extreme risk protection orders. Today, I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty, and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly, decisively, and without years of needless delay. These are just a few of the areas of cooperation that we can pursue. I am open and ready to listen and discuss all ideas that will actually work and make a very big difference. Republicans and Democrats have proven that we can join together in a bipartisan fashion to address this plague. Last year, we enacted the Stop School Violence and Fix NICS Acts into law, providing grants to improve school safety and strengthening critical background checks for firearm purchases. At my direction, the Department of Justice banned bump stocks. Last year, we prosecuted a record number of firearms offenses. But there is so much more that we have to do. Now is the time to set destructive partisanship aside, so destructive, and find the courage to answer hatred with unity, devotion, and love. Our future is in our control. America will rise to the challenge. We will always have, and we always will, win. The choice is ours, and ours alone. It is not up to mentally ill monsters. It is up to us. If we are able to pass great legislation after all of these years, we will ensure that those who were attacked will not have died in vain. May God bless the memory of those who perished in Toledo. May God protect them. May God protect all of those from Texas to Ohio. May God bless the victims and their families. May God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
See if he takes any questions.
Well, I watched Trump get out of that speech he did this afternoon, faster than cockroaches being revealed in a dark room with bright white light. He got out of there. He was very uncomfortable in giving that speech. He would have rather not to have given that speech, but the nation demanded it. And the reason why he got the hell out of there so fast was because he didn't want to entertain questions from the press. And I understand this because I was reading a story early this morning on Raw Story, that's RAW, Raw Story, that talked about 5 things that he's done, the Orange Con Man has done to thwart gun safety in this country. I'm going to give them to you 1 through 5. Giving guns to the mentally ill. 2, Trump stopped DOJ from using updated language about what defines mentally ill. 3, Trump allowed criminals to have guns. 4, Trump deleted 500,000 people previously banned from getting a gun. 5, Trump's 2000 budget cuts funds to state background check system. Let me read that again. There needs to be a comma in there someplace. Okay. Trump's 2019 budget cut funds to state background check system. Okay. Trump says a lot of things, and he's always saying the opposite of what he does. That's his style. Whatever he says is a lie. So he'll tell you that he wanted to help improve background checks. But he cut $12 million from the very system that does background checks. That was 5. Okay. So he cut that money. And as a side note on that, the gun lobby, NRA, spent $55 million to elect Donald Trump. So much for he did it with his own money. The 5,000 people previously banned from getting a gun. Let's talk about that just for a second. There were nearly 500,000, 500,000 records on people in the federal background check system who were considered fugitives. So this is all about fugitives. They would normally be prevented from buying a gun. The background check database deleted their records. The records being recreated at the FBI were then forced to adhere to the new definition of fugitive from justice. Now, there doesn't need to be a new definition for fugitive from justice. You commit a crime, there's a warrant out for your arrest, you flee. You are a fugitive from justice. What I'm understanding here is that Trump redefined that. He had his DOJ redefine what a fugitive from justice is. So he just rewrote the laws on what a fugitive is. Trump allowed criminals to have guns. 2016, the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms and Explosives introduced a fix to the loophole in the federal law that requires gun sellers certify that gun storage or safety devices will be available. So when you go into to buy a gun, you can also buy a lock or a safe. And even Cabela's Outdoor Fund paid for gun locks for any gun owner. So you went into Cabela's out and you wanted to buy a gun, they gave you a gun lock, trigger lock. The FBI barred anybody, well, once they did, barred anybody from fugitive of justice, from purchasing a weapon. You're a fugitive, you got a warrant out, they do the check, you can't get a weapon. Under Trump's Department of Justice, the FBI background check only blocks a person with an arrest warrant from buying a gun, but only, get this, only if they fled a state trying to evade prosecution, or were the subject of an imminent criminal prosecution. So that says to me that if I commit a crime here in Arizona and I flee over to Missouri, well, I'm good. But if I can't. Well, no, I'm not good. I'm sorry. I can't buy a weapon. But if I stay here in Arizona and I stay below the radar, apparently I can go purchase a weapon. Now, this is what the man has done. He's talking about he's going to help. He wants to help gun safety. Okay, so but he hasn't done that. He has made it easier for me as a fugitive, if I were a fugitive, to stay right here in the state where I committed the crime to go out and get another handgun. Okay. Stop the DOJ. Number two, stop the DOJ from using updated language about what defines mentally ill. So he killed a bill that said if you had been adjudicated or found to be mentally ill, that would bar you from buying a handgun. Trump, his DOJ killed that. He says the reason why he killed that, he said that the wording was so old that it was outdated. And so today, I guess it's updated, which allows a mentally ill person who was adjudicated. Now, adjudicated means that you were committed by a court. So now, if I'm committed by a court to a mental asylum or a mental illness hospital, I can come out of there. I've reinvented myself. I'm okay. And I can go out and buy a handgun. That's what Trump did. And then, number one, giving guns to the mentally ill. The first thing, because he's a petulant person and he's a vindictive person. And you remember when President Obama capped on it or busted on him in the White House press gathering. You know, the one they do where they make the jokes and all that. And Obama broke down on Trump, and Trump never forgot that. So one of the first things he did is when he got in office is he revoked Obama's executive order that mandated checks for those with mental illnesses before they buy a gun. And that is what he's done to allow criminals to buy guns. So he's out there, he's talking about mental illness, and then he's talking, it's the mental illness that kills people. It's not mental illness. Well, no, to him, it's not mental illness. It's guns. Guns kill people. Not that you're mentally ill. Number two, video games. Here we are again, back on the video games. The video games are the root of all evil when it comes to mass shootings now, mass killings. And this was so ridiculous. So that's why he booted it out of there. He got out of there because he knew he was going to have to field some questions from the press on these very 5 issues and whatever else he's done. So that was his speech today, and it was very unusual to see him fly out of there. And I'm gonna bet my bottom dollar the press is not going to cover it that way.
There clearly.